Once upon a time,
in a land far away.
I'm Katrina.
And I'm Geoff.
This is the Fairy Tellers Podcast.
Myth, legend, folklore, fable.
We explore what they say about cultures then and now,
Grab a hot cup of cocoa and a comfy seat,
while we tell you a tale.
Welcome back to the podcast for yet another exciting episode. Katrina, how you doing?
I'm doing really good. I was snowed in. People might have noticed that we only put out one episode in January. The last week and a half, something like that, got a little crazy. Or I guess it was like the last 2 weeks of January. I was storm prepping my house, and then Geoff was leaving the state.
Yeah, I fled from the terrible storms down to Florida, which was fun.
Like so many Ted Cruzes.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, so I survived the huge storm, the Snowmageddon. We got over a foot of snow. It was a record-breaking amount of snow. So anyway, we did not lose power. Our pipes did not burst. We were lucky, but we were snowed in. And then my children got a bunch of snow days. And so, yeah, my week was kind of all thrown off. We did not record anything. Even if you hadn't left town, I don't think you and I would have been able to record anything. So, turned out to be a great time for a vacation, Geoff.
Yeah, I'm glad. It was a good vacation too.
But now we're back.
Back and at it.
And this episode is going to be one of our slappy, happy, fun time episodes.
Yes, my favorite.
And I was debating on the theme of today's episode because I really wanted to do some ghost stories, and I was debating on whether for February ghost stories was appropriate or not or what. And then I came up with a justification for it. Here's my justification for it.
Okay.
Since the dark half of the year is ending, it's starting to be over. February is like the first time when you're getting like the glimmers of a hope for spring. Spring hasn't started yet, but you're getting these like glimmers and hopes that spring is going to be happening. Meanwhile, we have to put away the ghosts and the ghouls, the things that go bump in the night.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of like traditions of like scaring away the spooky spirits and things like that. So that's my justification. That's as good as.
And I still firmly am in the camp of like, we didn't need a justification. We could talk about whatever we want, whenever we want.
Yeah, as we should. So in that vein, I was going to say, I'm working on something with the American Folklore Society where there's a prize that they give out in one of their sections for creative writing and storytelling that's called the Dan Crowley Memorial Prize.
Mm-hmm.
Dan Crowley he was an anthropologist, and I just remembered I took this screen grab of his announcement of his death in 1998 from the New York Times, and it said, Daniel Crowley is dead at 76, anthropologist and partygoer. The reason I was like, I wish that my obituary or like a death announcement at this point in my life and career, I don't know if I'd end up in the New York Times when I died.
Mm-hmm.
But I would definitely want it to say like, died doing what she loved, partying hard. But he did a lot of ethnographic work and research on Carnival and on different festivals, but specifically the festivals like surrounding Carnival, Mardi Gras, Strove Tuesday, Fat Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
So he would go to different festivals in different countries. So every year, basically, he was going to a new country to attend their festivities. And he was in Bolivia at 76 years old, and he had chronic pain from when he had polio. After, I think, World War I, he ended up with like polio. Anyway, so like his health was always kind of like rough throughout his life, but he didn't let that stop him. And so he was out in Bolivia and he died on Mardi Gras that year of congestive heart failure. I think they attributed part of like the problem was like the altitude that he was at. He was not used to like the altitude he was at, but he had spent the previous week attending all of these like festivals and parties and stuff. So it's like he truly died doing what he loved. Anthropologist and partygoer. But all of that is like that's a side tangent to say that when I Googled Dan Crowley and the word folklore, one of the things that popped up was a folklore tale that is found in the book Tales of the Irish Fairies by Jeremiah Curtin. So Jeremiah Curtin, so now we're moving on to a different anthropologist. So the Daniel Crowley that's in this book that we're going to be retelling that tale has nothing to do with the anthropologist and partygoer.
I was like, wait a minute, this is wild.
You're like, I just read a story about this guy. No, it had nothing to do with each other. It just was like, oh, you said the words Daniel Crowley and folklore at the same time. Here, do you want this story? And I was like, I'm not mad.
Yeah, it's not what I was looking for, but I'll take it.
Yeah, but I'll take it. But anyway, so Jeremiah Curtin, the person who wrote down these stories that he collected in Ireland, completely fascinating. The full title is Tales of the Fairies and of the Ghost World Collected from Oral Traditions in Southwest Munster. So Jeremiah Curtin was in that area collecting more of like the mythologies. He was collecting these bigger capital F folklore more so than like minor day-to-day stuff. He was interested in kind of like the big stories, the type of stories that get collected by your Brothers Grimm's and I'm blanking on everybody else's name. Your Joseph Jacobs, those type of people. So he had been focusing on that. And while he was in the area recording stories, he was staying with this one man living up in his like a spare bedroom on his second floor overlooking the town. And he was really getting to know the people like when he wasn't doing his like official capacity stuff, he was talking to and interviewing people or not interviewing people. He was just like in a casual way, talking to people, getting to know people, whatever. And he thought it was really interesting that while he was collecting some of these stories of like Flynn McCool and the Giants and, the big mythological stuff, he also was finding out that there were people who believed literally in fairies and in ghosts. And he also found it really interesting that there were people who believed really, really strongly, even though they'd never seen anything, never had an experience. And then there were other people who were like, I don't believe in fairies and ghosts, but I'm not taking my chances.
They're like, I'm not superstitious, but I am a little stitious. That's their philosophy.
Yeah. And then there were people in the area who flat out were like, no, that's stupid. That's dumb. We don't believe in that. That's lame, whatever.
And then they got cursed by fairies.
Yeah. And he found those stories really interesting about the people. And so he decided that he was going to start collecting those stories from people as well. And so this book is based off of 2 or 3 different guys that would come over to his house and tell him stories about experiences that they had had or that they had talked to people who had had experiences with stuff. And so these guys were basically trying to not prove that the fairies and the ghosts were real, but to like get it down on record that like, no. People in this area, they believe in fairies and ghosts because they've experienced fairies and ghosts. So get out your pen and paper, dude, because I'm about to tell you a story. And he did, and it turned into this book. I think it very, very interesting, and I loved the story that popped up, especially about Daniel Crowley. And so I was like, it'd be a fun episode, is talking about ghosts, talking a little bit about tricksy fairies. I feel like that's a good bridge between winter and spring is we go from ghosts to fairies. So Geoff is going to start us off by telling us a little ghost story.
This is about Daniel Crowley, not the partygoer and folklorist anthropologist, as we've recently learned, and the ghosts. So, there lived a man in Ireland in a place called Cork. You may have heard of it. They've got a fun variation on an Irish accent in Cork. There's like a really famous video of those. I can't remember what sport it was, but they were Olympians from Cork and they got like interviewed for the Olympics and like they've got just like the most insane accents. Like even Irish people were like, this is crazy accents. These like of the most Cork accents. Anyway, if you find, look
they
it
were
up.
like, stop talking like that. You're lampooning us.
Yeah, but it's pretty cool. It's fun. Anyway, so imagine everything I say in this being in a Cork accent because I'm not going to do it. But guess what Daniel Crowley did for work? He was not an anthropologist and partygoer. He was a coffin-maker.
Oh, the best job of all.
And he had a bunch of coffins that were pre-made so that his apprentice could sell them when he wasn't around.
Nice.
Which I wasn't sure what the point of including that detail was. And I'm still not sure exactly why. It's like he had a bunch of pre-made ones. Whatever.
Because I was just going to say, like, I think part of it was like, because these are real stories being told by real men, they're like including different details that they're like, oh, and I'm going to say this out loud. It's like when my uncle's telling a story.
Yeah. They're not thinking about like, what is a narrative necessity for this story?
Yeah.
They're just going to be like, you know, it's like, and he was over at the bar, which used to be a stable back in the day. I used to know the stable keeper and he was a good guy. He cheated on his wife though. But you know, besides that, he was a real good guy. Like adds flavor.
Yeah.
Doesn't add to the narrative. It's also stable keeper. Is that even a thing? Whatever. But Daniel Crowley was a coffin maker. So one day a messenger came to his shop and said, hey, there's a man that has died. He's at the end of town. Why don't you take up a coffin over there or make one? And I guess it's like, well, I don't have to make one because I have a bunch that are all ready to go. So it is, I guess, somewhat relevant. But I would have also just like assumed
that he had some,
Yeah.
pre-made.
And also they could have just been like, and so he made a coffin and then went over, I don't know.
Yeah.
Again, we established why it doesn't matter. But so Daniel Crowley took that coffin, put it on a donkey cart and drove it all the way over to the wake house. And he went in and like delivered the coffin and the corpse was in the next room on a table. And there were like, 5 or 6 women that were there keeping watch around it. And there were a lot of people in the kitchen. And so when Daniel Crowley got there, they like invited him to sit down and to quote unquote, commence to shorten the night, which I'm glad it explains what that means. And it says that it's to tell stories, amuse yourself and others. So it's like, oh, hey, why don't you join us, like help us like pass the time, make the night go by more quickly than it would if we were just like sitting here staring at each other.
I absolutely love that, like that framing of like, oh, a storyteller shortens the night, almost like it's a magic power.
Uh-huh.
A good storyteller can make time go faster. A superpower. Yeah,
I like that a lot too. And it's like, I think we all have like experienced that. Like if I'm on a airplane and I'm like, have a movie I can watch like Lord of the Rings, that 3.5 hour flight doesn't seem so long as if I'm just like, raw dogging it as they say these days.
As the youths call it.
As the youths are wont to say. But yeah, and I do love I've got this whole thing with time. We've talked about it before, how it doesn't exist. It's a flat circle, blah, blah, blah. It's an illusion. But it talks about time, like we're, especially these days, so focused on like, oh, like an hour of time passing takes an hour to pass. Like we do have the understanding that like the passing of time is also subjective, but I feel like, at least me, maybe other people aren't this way, but I feel like the society in which we live, like the ability to take it like more literally, that like time goes by faster is like diminished because we've like quantified it and measured it so much,
Yeah.
So it like, I don't know. And maybe I'm reading too much into it, but it feels like a little magical to be like, like it's literally happening. The time is literally being shorter because functionally it is,
Yeah.
Anyway, so Daniel Crowley began to tell stories and shortening the night. And so they apparently they brought out some punch and, they were enjoying the punch. And then it says they were telling these stories. And then a second glass of punch was brought to old Daniel Crowley. And he kept on telling stories. And then there was also a man who sang a song and then another and another. So different guys were singing. They're like, hey, Daniel Crowley, why don't you sing for us too? And so he sang a song. He sang a song about fairies. And everyone like really liked the song. And so they like asked him to sing some more. And so like he kept singing. So everyone loved his songs, and among the people that loved these songs was a woman who had 3 daughters. And this woman was trying to make a match for one of her 3 daughters. And she was like, you know what? I think I'm going to get this good singing, good storytelling, good time having Daniel Crowley to be a match for my daughter.
Nice.
But it should be known that Daniel Crowley, he was a bachelor and well on in years and never even thought about marrying. So he was an old bachelor, didn't want to get married. And so like the woman that wants to make the match is like sitting next to another woman and being like, oh, hey, told her of like the plan. And it's like the other woman just shook her head like, nah, I don't think that's going to work. But then the matchmaking mother was like, you know what? Like, I'd be really happy if he would take one of my daughters. He's got a lot of money laid on the side. And why don't you go and talk to him? And like, don't mention me at first, but like, why don't you just go and talk to him till I don't break the ice eventually for me to come in. And so it's like, okay. And so the woman went to go to talk to Daniel Crowley. Basically, she went to say like, hey, you know what? Like there's some beautiful girls here. Like, why don't you go and try to like nab one? You might not get another chance to like get a good wife. And Crowley got really mad and he like jumped up. He's like, there's not a woman wearing clothes that I'd marry, which I thought was an interesting turn of phrase. I was like,
yeah.
What about a woman without clothes?
Yeah.
But I don't know. He didn't say that. He just said there's not a woman with clothes that he would marry. And he also said that there wasn't a woman born that could make him make 2 halves of a loaf for her. So like splitting his stuff, which I thought was also another interesting turn of phrase.
Yeah.
And so the mother was insulted and she started like just laying into Crowley, which I was confused because it sounded like the mother went and told this other woman to talk to him. But then it kind of seems like did she just then hear that and then like get up and like run over to him? I'm a little confused, but I may just be misunderstanding. Maybe it was the mother that went over the whole time. Either way, it doesn't matter because this mother's mad and she starts like saying like bad luck to you, you hairy little scoundrel.
Oh
and he's
gosh.
like, and she's basically like making fun. Well, like you might be a grandfather to my child. You're not fit to clean the shoes on her feet. You only have dead people for company day and night, and that's how you make your living. So like making fun of his age. It's kind of like, I don't know. You see a lot of stuff on like the internet of like dating sites or whatever, where like these guys are like coming on really hard to like a woman on like Tinder or whatever, like dating thing. And then they like turn them down and they're like, oh, you're ugly anyway, blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, she's kind of doing that same sort of thing. Like you wanted him to like match one of your daughters and now you're saying like that he's not worthy to do it.
Yeah.
But the last thing she said was talking about how like he makes his money, like he hangs out with the dead all the time and that's how he makes his money. And he's like, oh yeah? He's like, I'd rather hang out with the dead than the living if they're like you. And he's like, I don't have anything against the dead. Like, and I don't have any problem with like, you know, making money from the dead rather than the living because I make coffins and it's dead people that want coffins. So like, what's the deal? And so she's like, oh yeah, well, bad luck to you. Why don't you just go and hang out with dead people and get out of here? And, you know, like go party with dead people if you like dead people so much instead of us living people. Yeah. And he's like, you know what? If I knew how to have a party with dead people, I totally would. And then the woman's like, oh yeah, like helping him brainstorm how to actually do it. It's like they're going way deep into this like hypothetical made up situation. She's like, oh, why don't you invite them to supper? And then he stood up and ran out and said, you know, aloud, he's like, hey, men, women, children, soldiers, sailors, all people I've ever made coffins for, I invite you tonight over to my house and we're going to have a feast. And remember, this is happening at like a wake house where there's a dead body on the table. And it says that the people who were watching the dead man on the table saw the dead man smile when he heard that invitation. And like they were so freaked out by it that they like jumped up and ran out of the room. And at the same time, Daniel Crowley hurried back to his shop as fast as he could on his donkey cart. And on the way home, he bought a pint bottle of whiskey and put it in his pocket because he's going to go home and party by himself with the dead people.
Yep.
When he had left to go to drop that coffin off earlier in the evening, he had made sure that he, you know, locked it up and that he put down the shutters. But when he got close to his workshop, he saw that the windows were shining with light and he was like scared because he's like, oh no, like thought maybe that it caught on fire or that there were like some robbers in there or whatever. And so he like went up to a building like across the way and started kind of like peeking in to see what was going on. And he saw just crowds of men, women, children, lots of people walking towards his shop, going in.
Sailors and soldiers. Yeah,
sailors and soldiers and women and children and, you know, tinkers and tailors and soldiers and spies and all sorts of things like that. And yeah, they were going in, they weren't coming out. And so like, he's peeking around the corner, spying on his own shop. And when he's like hiding there, like spying on his own shop, he gets a tap on the shoulder and he's like, hey, what are you doing out here? everyone's coming to your warehouse to see you. Like, it's a shame for you to be standing out here when you've got your company waiting for you. Like, why don't you come on in? And so Crowley goes with this man to his shop. And just as he like passes the threshold, he sees like a huge gathering of people. And he realized like, oh, some of these people were neighbors or like some people that he had known in the past. And they were all singing and dancing and having a good time. And, you know, no one like kind of saw him at first. Then someone did, and they ran up to him. He's like, hey, you don't seem like you recognize me. And he's like, I don't recognize you. Like, how could I recognize you? He's like, well, it's possible that you could recognize me. It's like, you probably should. I'm the very first man that you made a coffin for. It's like, I gave you your first start in business. And then another man comes up and he's like, hey, Daniel Crowley, do you know me? And Daniel Crowley's like, no, I don't. And he's like, oh, I'm your cousin. You know, it's like, it's been a really long time since I died. And Daniel's like, oh, wow, yeah. Like, I know that you're my cousin. Like, I recognize you now that you say that, basically. And he's like looking around and at all these other people there. He's like, oh my gosh, like, what am I going to do to get these people out of here? What time is it? And they're like, oh, it's still early. It's only like 11 o'clock, dude. Like, the party's going to be going on for a long time. And so the cousin's like, hey, you know, you better be like a good host. And like, he says like, you know, you better receive them kindly, it says. And, you know, like, be good to them, make some merriment as best as you can. And Crowley's like, I mean, I don't have any money to like get food or drink for them. It's late at night. Everywhere is closed anyways. And the cousin's like, well, do your best. And then boop, goes off and starts dancing and having fun. While people are dancing, having fun, Crowley's just kind of like looking around, taking in the sights, and he sees a woman in the corner, and she is not participating in the singing and dancing and fun time having. She just kind of seems shy. She's like tucked away in the corner. And so he goes up to his cousin and he asks, he's like, hey, like, that woman over there, why is she so shy? Like, she seems kind of like she's afraid. Like, why isn't she having a good time like everybody else? And the cousin was like, oh, it hasn't been that long a time since, you know, she died, but you gave her a coffin because she had no way to pay for it. And so she's like worried that you're going to go up to her and like ask her for money, or you're going to let everybody know that she didn't pay for the coffin. It was like, what? How's he going to expect like a dead person to give him money anyway?
I know. What's the plan?
But who knows?
He's like, yeah, I'm going to take this time to go and embarrass her. I guess that's all he can do is just ridicule her in front of other people.
Other dead people at that.
Yeah.
Know?
Like, oh, now all of the other dead people are going to judge me.
But anyway, they move on from that. It's like, oh, we just explained. There's what's happening with that lady. But there was apparently another guy there named John Reardon, one of the only other people that gets a name in this entire thing, who was a piper. And he was also from the city of Cork. Oh, no, I lied. There was also a fiddler there named John Healy. I forgot that there were two people because they're both named John, but they have different last names, John Reardon and John Healy. Healy, even though he was like a really good fiddler, he didn't have a fiddle with him. Instead, he made one. And the way he made it was he took the flesh off of his body and he was like rubbing on his own ribs to make music because each rib made a different note.
As everybody knows.
Yeah. And he made it the loveliest music that Daniel Crowley had ever heard, playing on his fiddle made of his own ribs.
Because I'm imagining him like pulling like a flap up of like his skin. So he's like...
It's quite the visual. It's like, whoa, it gets very like macabre and hilarious. And even more so from there, because as, you know, this very good fiddler is fiddling on his ribs, everybody in the party starts throwing off whatever flesh that they had on them.
Woo!
And they start dancing jigs and playing hornpipes with their bare bones, which I'm like, you know, the spooky, scary skeletons like video is like playing in my mind.
Spooky, scary skeletons and shivers down your spine.
And so, like, you know, they just started partying harder than ever before. And there was a part of me that imagined a little bit, you know, because of my previous study in human anatomy, like they lift off their skin and there's like muscle underneath, but it didn't say skin, it said flesh. So I was like, you know, and also he was like rubbing on his rib bones.
Yeah.
So I'm like, you know, they're just
the skin,
skeletons.
The muscle, the everything. Yeah.
Yeah. All of it. And anyway, so they just started like partying hard and they're like, I don't quite get this reference, but it says, you'd think that it was Brandon Mountain that was striking Mount Eagle with the noise that was in his like shop. I think it just means like it was a crazy big party.
It was a rager.
Oh, this is really funny. I just apparently forgot all the named characters because there's apparently, you know, it said Daniel Crowley, he's kind of like, oh man, like I don't know how I'm going to last the night with this like party going on. Like, how am I going to get out of this? Thinking like, man, he was at the other one, like dancing, partying, having a good time to make the day shorter. And he's like, I don't know if the daylight's ever going to come. So it's like this party is actually making the day longer for him because he's like dreading it so much.
Yeah.
But he looks across and he sees a man there, a man who's also named John Sullivan this time. And John Sullivan, in his life, he had married 2 women. Like he had a wife, she had died, and he remarried to a second wife. And he sees John, skeleton version of John, dancing with his second wife. And they're like dancing, and everyone there was enjoying their dancing. And they danced really, really well, apparently. John Sullivan and his second wife. And it says that all the skeletons were watching and their mouths were open, like laughing and having a good time at how great they were dancing. And this dancing and how much fun he was having didn't really impress his first wife that much. And she got very jealous and very mad. And she ran down to where they were dancing. And she's like, how dare you dance with her? Like I should be the one that you should be dancing with. Like I'm your first wife. And the second wife's like, well, I don't think that that's true because like he married you, but then you died. And like after you died, he was free to do whatever he wanted. And he chose to marry me. So like, I'm going to dance with him whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
And so the first wife, like, you better hold your tongue. And then she's like, lets out apparently a very shameful secret for this second wife. She's like, you couldn't come to this feast tonight at all, except for the loan of another woman's shin bones. It says Sullivan just looked at his 2 wives and he's like, wait a second, to the second one. These aren't your shin bones? And she's like, no, they're not. I had to borrow them from a neighboring woman. And so like, it's her shin bones that I have tonight.
How embarrassing.
And he's like, who is the owner of these shin bones? And she's like, oh, these belong to Catherine Murray. Remember when I'm like, oh, no one has names. And then it's like everyone has names.
Everybody.
Even the person whose shin bones are there making an appearance without the rest of Catherine. But anyway, so like the second wife says, oh, these shin bones belong to Catherine Murray. She hadn't had a very good name in her own life. And John Sullivan's like, wait a minute, why didn't you just come like on your own 2 feet? I don't get it. And she was like, oh, like I wasn't too great in life myself. And so I had like a penalty, a punishment put upon me that like whenever there's a feast or a ball or whatever in the afterlife, I'm not allowed to go unless I borrow someone else's shins in order to like attend the party.
That's a very interesting thing that happened to her in purgatory.
Yeah. It's like, what did she do?
Yeah.
How is that relevant? Or like, how is this, what crime is that the punishment for? I don't know.
She was always borrowing people's stuff without asking.
Maybe.
So now she has to ask people before she borrows stuff.
Yeah.
I had a roommate in college that was like that.
They had to ask to borrow people's shin bones before she could go
now
to the
she
dance.
does. No, just kidding. She's alive still. But
someday.
Anyway, that's fine.
That's it.
I'm clearly
It's an interesting
over
dynamic. Yeah, clearly. Just like John Sullivan was over his second wife's borrowed shin bones. False. He wasn't. He was really mad when he found out that he'd been dancing with a woman whose shin bones belonged to yet another woman.
I'm dancing with a woman and these aren't even her shin bones?
Yeah. What is going on?
What is this? Entrapment.
I don't think it's entrapment. It's not entrapment.
Yeah, you have to tell somebody if you have somebody else's shin bones, or else it's entrapment.
Before you dance with them.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. But he didn't ask. If he asked, she had to tell the truth, but he never asked. Anyway, he's so mad. Do you know what he does, Katrina? He gave this second wife a slap so hard that sends her spinning into the corner.
At this fine party.
At the coffin making shop.
After the coffin maker had been like, I don't want to be at this party with you rude ladies. Now I wish I could go party with the dead. And the dead were like, actually, we're pretty trashy too.
Yeah. And so this Sullivan slaps his second wife. She goes spinning into a corner. And that second wife had some relatives that were also among the skeletons present at that party. And seeing their relative get slapped and spun across the room, they got pretty mad at Sullivan. And so they're like, well, we're not going to let him get away with that. We're going to knock the satisfaction straight out of Sullivan. And so they all got up. And because they didn't have any weapons, like no clubs or whatever, they pulled off their left arms and they began to just like slash and strike at Sullivan. And it's like, it just became like a huge battle of these skeletons beating this other skeleton with their own limbs.
I love the Irish.
Amazing.
I love the Irish so much.
Yeah. I mean, me too, after reading this story. And so like Daniel Crowley not such a fan of what's going on. And he's like at the far end of the room and he's cold and he's hungry. And he's like, I don't know if I'm going to get like hit by a bone in this like whole altercation. This is getting way out of hand.
He didn't want to get boned at this party.
No, he did not.
It's not that kind of party.
And so as Daniel,
it is that kind of party.
As Sullivan's like getting beaten, he's like trying to dodge the blows and doing whatever. He like gets as far away as like being right up next to Daniel Crowley that he stepped on Crowley's toes. And so like Crowley got so mad that this skeleton stepped on his toes that he punched Sullivan in the head and knocked his head off and sent the head flying in the air to the opposite corner. And so Sullivan, it's funny, it says he saw his head flying off from the blow. And it's like with the eyes that are in his head that are flying through the air.
That's a cool like perspective to think about. Like you never, like you might in a movie see somebody get their head chopped off or their head fly off or whatever, but you rarely, if ever, get to see the head watching the body getting farther away from itself while it's like flying backwards.
That is true. And it is interesting too. In this case, like you get the POV shot of the head and it like makes sense because the person's dead already.
Yeah.
Like they're still, cognizant and aware. So like you do get to see their point of view of their own body, like getting further and further
Him
away.
being like, hey now, as his head flies across the room.
Sullivan like sees his head flying and starts to run. And I'm picturing, like football style, like Hail Mary pass, like goes and like tries to catch his own head and then he catches his own head and is like so mad at Daniel Crowley that he hates his own head and now takes the role of a quarterback and chucks his head at Daniel Crowley.
Oh my God.
And nails Daniel Crowley, knocks him to the floor and makes him fly up underneath a bench. And then Sullivan, still mad at having gotten his head knocked off, also squeezes under the bench himself and starts to strangle Daniel Crowley. And it's like he squeezed his throat so tight and he like pushed him so hard between the bench and the floor that Daniel Crowley like lost consciousness, passed out. And then when Daniel Crowley came to in the morning, his apprentice, remember, he had an apprentice, his apprentice found him like laid out under this bench with an empty bottle under his arm. And he was all like bruised and beat up. And his throat was sore from where Sullivan had squeezed it. And he didn't know what had happened at the party after that, how the party had broken up, or where his guests went and when. The end. And I'm seeing why it's important to set up that he made the things ahead of time because they had to set up the apprentice because the apprentice had to find him looking like he was just drunk under the bench.
Yeah, which I love it. So I've been recently reading this book by Jeremy Hart called Fairy Encounters in Medieval England, Landscape Folklore and the Supernatural. He's also written the book Cloven Country, The Devil and the English Landscape. And one thing that's really interesting about his book is he wants to see what you can get out of the stories that were written down in like England, Ireland, the UK generally. If you look at those stories from the medieval period, so before this, maybe before like this story is like written down and like being retold, but looking at those stories as if they really happened or that they happened the way that the person who's telling the story or like recounting it believed it happened. And so like if this Daniel Crowley had told everyone the next day about what happened to him, like the experience he had, and so like that made the rounds as a story of like ghosts being real. And that story gets around to these old guys that are retelling the story to Jeremiah Curtin. Like, I know my natural tendency is to be like, so this guy got drunk and then came up with like a huge story about what happened. But Jeremy Hart is like in his books is talking about, what we can get out of the story if we believe that that person did experience something, that they had that encounter and that experience. Yeah. Like what can we get out of the story that way? And so there's part of me, like, I'm like in my brain, those dueling parts of me, one that wants to be like, that's hilarious to think about this guy getting drunk and then telling everybody like, I didn't pass out drunk underneath a table after getting in a fight with an old woman. Just because I bought this whiskey and had it on me when I was found under the table the next day, that doesn't mean I was drunk.
No. I got the crap kicked out of me by a skeleton because
He chucked his head at me
He's-
after I slapped it off of him.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. But besides all of that, it's just a hilarious story.
Oh yeah. And so like I could picture it so vividly. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
Like I want to see I pictured it as like because of the spooky scary skeletons, like I pictured it as like a cartoon
Yeah.
in that style.
Yeah.
And absolutely loved it. And you rewrote it for me by helping me imagine the skeleton watching his own body like get smaller and smaller as his head POV is getting like further away, flying through the air.
And just so that people know, this book was first published in 1895. And so, yeah, before people were watching cartoons of skeletons dancing around graveyards, they had their own imaginations imagining it happening. But no, I love like the slapstick comedy of it.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's one of my favorite things when I'm watching a movie where you have the conceit of like, okay, these are corpses. You know, I think of like a movie like Coco or Nightmare Before Christmas, where these characters don't feel things the same way you and I do, or they're not constrained physically to like I can't throw my head at somebody.
Right.
That is not something I can do. But then when you imagine, oh, what if this person doesn't have feelings like in their body because they're a zombie, they're a reanimated corpse or whatever? What funny antics could we do with our bodies if we could pull our arm off and slap somebody with our arm? Like now I have an extended double arm that I can whip at somebody. I love the creativity of that
Absolutely.
thought and in stories. So just hilarious and excellent. So for our next story of our silly, happy, slappy fun time. It's extra slappy tonight, thanks to your story.
There are people getting slapped with skeleton arms.
I'm going to retell the story of John O'Connor's and the Fairies. And also, I'll say I love this story because a man gets a comeuppance. And you know that I love that. So there was a man named John Connors. And I was going to say about the names, it is really interesting that when people are telling stories that are like local, usually you get more names of people, especially when they're trying to frame it as like contemporary to like the time or in recent memory. They will use actual names for people instead of like, oh, once there was a man. And it actually kind of shows how old and disconnected from the storyteller the tale is when you just have careers and no names. Because like Daniel Crowley, coffin-maker, the farther away it gets from the people who are telling the tale and the neighborhood that's being told, the more he's just a coffin maker.
Right.
It turns into like the sextant or whatever. Like it just like gets farther and farther away from a named dude. So it's interesting. So this guy that we're talking about now, John Connors, John, very, very popular name. So he lived near Killarney, which I assume I'm pronouncing all of the names wrong no matter what, just because I'm missing an accent. At the very least, I'm missing an accent. Killarney. And he was the father of 7 small children. But not only were they 7 children, they were 7 girls. And he did not have any sons. And he was extremely bitter, grumpy, angry about this, that he's like, oh, what is this? In fact, when his 7th daughter was born, he would not come from the field to go and see the mother of the child. He didn't attend the birth. Somebody came out to the field to tell him, hey, your wife just had your 2nd baby. And he's like, okay. And they're like, it's a girl. Do you want to go see? And he's like, no, I've got girls. I know what they look like.
You seen one, you seen them all.
Yeah. And it said when the time came for the christening, he wouldn't go for sponsors, meaning he didn't go looking for godfather, godmother for his kid. Because he was like, who cares?
Some real dad of the year behavior.
Yeah. He's like, a 7th girl, who cares? I'm not going to go and try to find her the best connections. No, I don't like that. And it said that he even acted like he didn't care whether the wife lived or died, which,
Yikes.
what a garbage bag.
For sure.
But apparently he did care if she was alive or dead because he got her pregnant again. So he didn't care if she was alive, but he didn't mind doing her. Sorry, I'm angry.
And he's supposed to be like the protagonist of this story?
Yeah, do you like him yet?
No. Not even in like an anti-hero kind of a way,
No.
you know.
So anyway, a couple years went by, his wife got pregnant again, and this time it was a boy. And some of the women, who were there at the birth when the baby was born and it was a boy, they went running out into the field to tell John Connor, like, guess what? You are the father of a boy. It's finally happening for you. And he was so delighted that it said he caught the spade he had with him and broke it on the ditch. So he just was like, yeah, sweet. I'm losing my mind. He's that guy at one of those like gender reveal parties that like when it's a boy, just like shoves the woman out of the way and is like going and like giving all these like high fives to like all of his like bros and is like, yeah, we did it, man.
Sure.
It's like, oh, what a jerk. Anyway, so it said he hurried home and sent for bread and meat and was like, let's feast. Let's have a party at the house. This is so exciting. And then he got to thinking about it and he was like, you know what? There are no people in our parish that deserve to be the sponsors, the godfathers or godmothers of this son, this like really great son. None here. So when night comes after we've had like this big feast and everybody leaves, because you have to get this kid christened quickly, right? It has to be, I think, within like 3 days. You have to get this kid christened. So he was like, okay, once we finish this feast, this party, I'm going to leave town. I'm going to go to the city over where there's better people in the neighboring parish. I have better friends that I can invite. I have a friend and his wife in the next village over that I think are good enough for this son of mine. So when night fell, he was like, perfect, bridled and saddled up his horse, and he rode off toward the neighboring parish. So the horse that he was riding was this beautiful white horse. He was the only person in like anywhere around that had a white horse. It was a very distinct horse. And so he went riding off with his horse to go and find this friend and his wife to invite to be the godfather and mother of his excellent, exceptional boy. So the village, and this is where it's like, because I am not a person who's familiar with the landscape, when I'm retelling the story, I would take out the details of like in which direction he was going and like where he was, because I'm like, this doesn't, but because these men were telling this story in the landscape to the people that they were talking to, he included the details where he's like, the village to which he was going was Beaufort, south of Killarney. So there was a public house on the road. So Connor, he stopped in and he treated all of the bystanders who were there to a couple glasses of ale. So basically anybody who's around, he's like stopping them, giving them alcohol so that he can tell them about his son. Is something going on, Geoff?
Oh, no. Well, okay. I can't see like a compass rose on this map. I'm like looking it up on Google Maps. And it's like, Beaufort looks like it's west of Killarney.
Wow.
On my map.
Oof.
So
I don't know what these old men were talking about. Maybe the road heads south before it heads west?
Yeah, it doesn't. So like to the southwest of Killarney is Loch Lean, like a big lake.
Oh, nice.
So like it has to go kind of like the road is like on the northern side. Well, the road that's here exists now.
Oh.
But it's like, I guess if they went south around the lake, like the super long way, and it doesn't matter.
But it was just, you were making a concerned face. And so I was like, I was just worried like a microphone stopped working or something like that.
No.
Okay.
It was much less important than that.
You're like, no, I was looking up the maps, Katrina.
I was fact checking the geography of these storytellers. And you know what? They maybe should have left out some of the directions that they were traveling because they're getting them wrong.
Wow. Anyway, so they're stopped at this public house on this side of the road. So he's stopping every guy who's passing by and offering him a drink and then telling them all about his wonderful, fantastic, amazing son that he now has because he's really excited. So now he's just like throwing money everywhere and talking everyone's ears off. after that, got back up on his horse and started riding. So he'd gone a couple miles when he met a stranger, a good-looking gentleman wearing red knee breeches, swallow-tailed coat, and it says a Carolina hat. So like just a really tall, fancy hat. Not a guy that looked like he was just an anybody. He looked really well-to-do. And the stranger, saluted towards John Connor, waved at him, and John returned the favor. And the stranger asked him where he was going at such an odd hour, because it was, late in the evening. So John Connor told him, I'm headed to Beaufort to find sponsors for my young son. And the stranger was like, oh, no, you foolish man. You left the road a mile behind you. You have to turn back and take the left-hand turn. You've come too far. And John Connor was like, oh, yeah, that's my bad. I probably got distracted, turned around because I was getting drunk and saying hi to everybody that I know. So John Connor, he turned back as he was directed, and he kept going, and he didn't cross by the crossroads the way that guy had told him that he would. And so he just kept riding, and about half an hour later, he saw the same gentleman in front of him. Suspicious. And he was like, wait, aren't you the man I met a while ago going to Beaufort? And the guy was like, yeah, I am. And he's like, what? Wait, what? And the good-looking man, on the horse was like, are you still trying to get there? And he was like, what? Yeah, and he's like, no, you need to turn around. You passed.
Yeah, problem is you went south. You need to go west.
Jeff's like, I'm telling you right now also, you're going the wrong way. So the guy's like, go back up about a mile on the road. On the right-hand side now, you're going to see a turn off. You want to take that turn off. And John Connor was like, oh, man, I don't know. I didn't see anything. Maybe from the light or the direction I was coming. And the guy's like, yeah, sure. You might want to head off. So John Connor was like, all right. So he started riding back, and he was riding for about an hour or so, but he still didn't find a side road to turn down on. And then he saw in front of him for a third time that same stranger riding a horse. And he was like, wait, John Connor, you still on this road? And he's like, yeah, I don't know how I keep missing it. That's so weird. And the stranger was like, you know what? It's getting late. The road is dark. Maybe you should come back to my house. My house is close by. You don't want to be knocking on doors but everybody's already in bed, asleep by now. Just come back to my place. And John Connor was like, oh, that's really nice of you to say that. And he's like, yeah, no problem. You can head out looking for sponsors for your son in the morning, in the daylight hours. And John Connor was like, all right, thanks, man. So they headed back to this stranger's house, and they found an exit off the road and went up it until they found a fine castle. And John Connor was like, man, I didn't even know this was over here. It's crazy. I don't remember ever seeing this. And the stranger told him to dismount off of his horse and leave it because he said, the horse will get taken care of. I have servants enough. And so John Connor was like, oh, okay. That's really nice. So anyway, they go inside, and the gentleman gave John Connor a good supper. And after supper, he showed him to his bed, and he said, take off your clothes and sleep soundly till morning. Which I'm like, as a woman, I would not be traveling alone on these streets in the dark, would not go back to a stranger's secondary location. I keep thinking of right now, on TikTok a lot, there were I don't know, on my side of TikTok, there were a bunch of this one song that was like, you think the devil had horns? Well, so did I. That was what was playing in my head the entire time that this guy was interacting with him. I was like, don't trust the good-looking stranger. Don't go with him to a secondary location. And when he's like, hey, hop into bed and take off all your clothes, please. Nah, I'm going to keep my clothes on. But John Connor did not. He took off his clothes. He did exactly as the stranger had asked him. He took off his clothes and climbed into bed. And when he was asleep, the stranger came in and took his clothes. And then he created, it says, a corpse, just like John Connor's. So he somehow magicked a body, not one that was alive and wasn't a Frankenstein situation. It was more of a Weekend at Bernie's situation.
Just a dead body that looked like.
Yeah, that was made to look like John Connor's. So the stranger put the clothes on it, tied the body to the horse, and leading the beast outside, turned its head towards home. I assume gave it a smack on the rear and wished it luck. And then it says he kept John Connors asleep in bed for 3 weeks. Meanwhile, like within hours, it was like by the next morning, the horse had reached the village and it had got back to the house. And the people saw the horse with the dead body on the back and they were all like, oh my gosh, John Connors, something happened to him and his horse like came back with him. Oh, geez. That's so sad. He just had a son. Is the son he'd always wanted, and now he's dead. That's so sad. And so they pulled him off of the horse. Basically, they had the kids christening on like his 3rd day without his dad like anywhere to be seen, to be found, because he was to be found because they had found like his dead corpse. And then after the kid was christened and blessed, then they got down to the business of like burying this corpse and having a funeral for this man. So everybody mourning, lamenting over him, saying things like, oh, wasn't he such a good man? And he was such a good father to his large family, which I'm like, people say a lot of stuff at funerals.
Yeah.
I gotta say.
Once you're dead and gone, people make up all kinds of nice lies about you.
You hope. You hope.
You hope.
You're like, if you're gonna lie, I guess go all out. Like, oh, he was such a good dad. He had those 8 kids and he really loved his son.
Yeah.
Yipes.
That's true.
Yep. It said the priest was sent for to celebrate mass and attend the funeral, which he did. So anyway, everybody lamenting this man. And I'm sure if this woman wasn't 3 days postpartum, I'd be like, man, and I hope she goes out and is like, you know what? I'm going to look for a new, better man. She doesn't. She's 3 weeks, she's 3 days postpartum. Like after having like her 8th kid, this woman, she doesn't need to go, off flirting around town. This woman needs a vacation.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so 3 weeks later, John Connor was roused from his sleep by the stranger who came in and said, hey, it's high time for you to be waking. Your son has been christened. The wife, thinking you would never come, had the child baptized already, and the priest went ahead and found sponsors in the town for your kid. Because you've been a lazy lie about. And the stranger was also like, and your horse left here and already went home. And the guy was like, whoa, what are you talking about? How could all that have happened? Wait, how long have I been asleep? And he says, yeah, you've been asleep for 3 whole days, which I'm like, that's especially jarring to like, you think that you missed like 3 days. That's bad enough. But everybody else knows that you've been gone for 3 weeks.
3 weeks. Why would he lie to him at that point too and say it was only 3 days?
Because he's messing with him.
That's a good point.
Which, love that. So yeah, he was like, you've been here for 3 whole days and nights just sleeping in that bed. You've got to get up. You're really inconveniencing me, man. And John Connor was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And he's like looking all around him and stuff. And he's like, where are my clothes? And the guy was like, how would I know where your clothes are? But you need to get out of here. The sooner the better. And John Connor was like, well, I can't leave your house without clothes on. I don't have clothes. And the stranger was like, that doesn't feel like it's my problem. I think you just need to get out of my house. Just leave. And John Connor was like, I can't walk around the countryside completely naked. And the guy was like, then grab a sheet from the bed and wrap yourself up. And he said, I have no more time to lose on the likes of you. So I'm like, dang. So John, suddenly, being afraid and freaked out like by this man, because yipes, grabs a sheet, wraps it around him, and he starts stumbling out of the house. And after he gets down like the front steps of the house, he turns around to look back, and there is no castle. And the owner is gone, nowhere to be seen. And he's just standing there in a sheet in the middle of a field, like a crazy person.
With an empty bottle of whiskey in his hand.
So anyway, it happened to be Sunday morning, on the morning that he woke up. Does he know that? Probably not, because he thinks he's been sleeping for 3 days. It's not 3 days. 3 weeks. So anyway, so it's Sunday morning. And so he's going down the road and he starts seeing that there's a bunch of people walking down the road on their way to Sunday mass. And he's like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. I don't want anyone to see me nude on the side of the street. Yeah. So he hurried out into the fields, like back into the fields away from the road, so that nobody would see him naked. And so he walks over. It said, as he was nearing his own village at the side of the mountain, there happened to be 3 or 4 little boys looking for stray sheep. And they see Connor and they know that he's been dead for 3 weeks. They buried his corpse. Like they had his corpse. Like, there was like a proper funeral like for him. So they see him and they freak out. They start screaming and running away, falling over with fright. And John Connor's like, what in the world? Because he just thought the kids were screaming because he's like a naked man in the fields. Like, he's got a sheet wrapped around him. But
I mean, yeah, that's fair. Still.
Yeah.
If you're just like hanging out and like a man in just a sheet comes walking towards you.
Yeah.
In the middle of a field.
I'd choose the bear.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But anyway, so the kids, they like run into the village and they're like, we just saw John Connor. We just saw the ghost of John Connor out like the fields. It's his ghost. And everyone's like, what? No, that can't possibly be. And it says in the story, it is the custom in Ireland when a person dies to sprinkle holy water on the clothes of the deceased and then give them to poor people or to friends for God's sake. It is thought that by giving the clothes in this way, the former owner has them to use in the other world. So this is counterintuitive to the like mythologies and stuff, the funeral rites that I've heard of with clothes or any object, which is like if you bury them with it, or you burn it with them, that's how you get stuff over like to the other side. But in this way, they're saying like you can ensure that they get clothes in the next life by giving away their clothes. Sprinkle them with holy water. And it says the person who wears the clothes must wear them 3 times to mass, one Sunday after another, and sprinkle them each time with holy water. After that, they may be worn as the person likes. But that's how you ensure that the body or that the dead person's spirit isn't wandering through like purgatory or light or heaven or whatever without clothes on. So when the women in the village heard these boys like, we just saw John Connor's ghost and he's naked except for a sheet. They were like, what? Like, that's not right. So they went over to his widow and they told her, hey, our kids have seen your husband's like ghost wandering around in a sheet. You must not have gotten rid of it, like given his clothes away. Were you stingy and like kept his clothes for your own self? And she was like, no, I would never do that. I absolutely gave them away. I bet the guy that I gave them away to hasn't been wearing them to mass and sprinkling them with holy water every Sunday. So she went over to that guy to be like, what's going on? Which was like one of her relatives that she'd given it to. So she went over to his house and sat down. And she was like, how dare you, you heathen? I did not think you the man to leave my poor John naked in the other world. You neither went to mass in the clothes I gave you nor sprinkled holy water on them. And the guy was like, what are you talking about? I'm wearing the clothes right now. You can see that I'm wearing them. This is the 3rd Sunday. I went to mass this morning. I sprinkled holy water on them. We're clear. Your husband should not be wandering around the other world or a ghost like who's nude. So it could not possibly have been your husband that those boys saw wandering in the field. And she was like, all right, you're right. I'm going through a lot. I'm so sorry. Like it's been a rough couple of weeks for me personally. I just had my 8th baby. My husband died. Boys were screaming in the house. Some women accosted me. I'm sorry. That's my bad. So she went back to her house. Meanwhile, where we left John Connor out in the fields, John Connor remembers, hey, I have an uncle that's closer. I'm closer to his place than I am to mine. While people are all still out on the roads, I'm going to head over to his house and see if he can give me some clothes. And then I can walk on the main streets to get back to my house instead of going back this long way through all of these fields. So he goes over to the farmer like over to like the farmer's house. And the farmer had a servant girl and a servant boy who worked for him. And not far off was a turf bog. I don't know if people are familiar with like peat bogs, but they sell peat moss, and like from blocks of this peat, when you cut it and dry it out, it's like logs. It burns for a really long time. It's a really good way. It's how a lot of people would like heat their homes. And that's also, they still do it today, which if people have seen stuff like in the news where a body from the Middle Ages was unearthed from the peat bog today, or like this load of butter, ancient butter was found in like the peat bog. It's because they'll be out cutting those peat turfs and they'll find these preserved bodies and stuff like in the peat. But that's why people still fight it today, is because people use it as like fuel to burn in their fires, because like it's a really, really good fire, like a log. It's like yeah. So anyway, all the turf at the house had been burned and used up like during the night. And so the farmer, who's the uncle of John Connor, he sent out his servant girl. I'll read it here. The servant girl was told to go down to the reek and bring home a creel of turf. A reek is a long pile of turf, and a creel is a basket. So she went down to the long pile of turf to cut off a piece and put it in her basket to bring it home. I just think it's interesting that they have to be like, we know that you're not, if somebody told you to go get a reek and bring it home in the creel, like you'd be like,
what are you talking about?
I don't understand the words you're saying to me. So she went to the reek and was filling her creel when she happened to look toward the far end of the reek, and there she saw a man sticking his head out from behind it, because it's John Connor hiding behind the turf, trying to like look out, make sure nobody's coming. So this girl sees this man, and it's John Connor, who's been dead and buried these last 3 weeks, and he's wrapped in a sheet. And so of course she looked at him 1 second, double take, starts screaming. So she starts screaming, throws the turf down on the ground, runs all the way back. She's fallen over again and again in terror. It says falling every few steps from terror. And because you get it. So she gets over to the farmer and she's like, John Connor's below in the bog behind the reek of turf, nothing but a sheet on him. And the farmer and the servant boy just start laughing, because they're like, girl, what are you talking about? This is the way with you always when there's work to do. I'm like, that's hilarious. She sees ghosts every time like she's supposed to be like doing chores. Anyway, so they kind of are like, okay, silly woman, whatever, we get it. You don't want to go down there. And so the farmer's like, okay, to the servant boy, like head down there and go get the turf. I need something to burn. So the boy starts walking over there so he can bring back the turf. And as he's coming close by, John Connor pokes his head up to, look again to see if the coast is clear. And this boy sees him and he starts running, screeching, worse than the girl, it said. And then nobody would go down to the creek to have a look, because they were like, nope. There's a ghost in the peat and down in the bog. And so everybody was like, I'm not going down there. So early in the evening, John Connor's wife made her children get on their knees and pray the rosary, asking for the father's soul to have repose. And as they are down on their knees praying, there's a rapping, as if something gently tapping at their chamber door. They hear like a knocking like at their door. And the woman calls, who's outside? Because she's not opening the door for nobody. People, you need to text to let us know you're coming over first. Can't just come over. I don't like that. I need to be expecting you. And he had not texted her because it was 1893 when this story was recorded. Anyway, so she calls out, like, who's out there? And John Connor answers that it's like him, that it's me. And she's like, may the Almighty God and his beloved mother give rest to your soul. And so all the kids, they cross themselves and they like are praying the rosary like even harder, because they're like, oh, no. Our dad's come back from the dead because his soul didn't have any rest. So they're praying, they're shaking, they're so scared. And it said they were in dread he'd come in through the keyhole. They knew a ghost could do that if it wished. So they're like, no, please let the ghost stay outside. So they're not opening the door. So John, he goes over to a window and he starts tapping on that. And the old woman, she like looks out and sees his face. And so she's praying even harder. And he's just like, woman, won't you just open the door and throw some clothes out to me? I just need some clothes. Can you chuck some clothes out to me? And she's just like, no, like our Father who art in heaven. I was just like, please let this not be happening. And he's just like, I'm perishing from the cold. And she's like, oh my gosh, he is feeling
the chill
of death. Like, and so John, didn't want to break down his door, and he didn't know if he was strong enough to do it anyway. So he was like, all right, who else can I go to? Because they're just inside repeatedly praying and not opening the door. And so he's like, okay, is there somebody else that I can go to? So he's like, maybe I'll go back over to my uncle's house now that things have calmed down and like knock on the door. So he goes over to the uncle's house, knocks on the door, and the family is inside on their knees, repeating the rosary, praying for his soul. And so he's like, please. So he knocks on the door, and this servant girl, she just goes and answers it. And so she opened it. And I love this. It said, seeing Connors, she came near cutting his nose off. She shut it that quickly in his face. She's like, no, do not come in here. And she starts screaming, John Connor's ghost is haunting me. Not another day or night will I stay in this house if I live to see morning. And so everybody is just, it says, threw themselves onto the bed, forgetting to undress or finish their prayers. And they're just like, please make it all end. So John Connor, he's kicking at the door. Nobody's opening it. He's banging on the window. He's just like, can somebody please just throw me out clothes? Evening is here. I'm standing outside in a sheet. I've been in this sheet all day, hiding away from people. No one is helping me. Can somebody just throw me some clothes? So he's like freaking out. And everyone's like, please. So he's like, okay, I'm going to go over to the doctor and tell him that everybody in the village is like gone crazy. Because he's a man of science. Like, I'm sure he'll be able to help me. And so he goes over to the doctor's house, and the servant boy of the doctor, when he saw John Connor coming, he starts screaming. He's like, John Connor's ghost is at the door, and he has nothing but a sheet on him. And the doctor's like, kid, are you joking? There's no such things as ghosts. You're so dumb. You are such a dumb backwoods child to believe in ghosts. So he looks out the window and he sees, sure enough, there's John Connor standing there in a sheet. So he's like, oh my gosh, I've seen a ghost. Oh my gosh, I've seen a ghost. Oh no, don't open the door. Oh my goodness. Do I believe in ghosts? Are ghosts real? Is this something I believe in now? And so the doctor wouldn't let him in the house either. And so he's banging on the door and window, and he's like, can somebody please? And the doctor's like, oh no, God be good to us. His soul must be damned, for his soul was in purgatory, or his soul has to be in purgatory, because I know that God would not let a swearing, cursing man into heaven. So he must be in purgatory. May the Lord have mercy on the people of this village. And I won't stay in this town another day. I'll move to the next town tomorrow morning. So everybody's just like, I got to get out of here. So now John is like, okay, I'm running out of options. Like, who do I go to? And he's like, okay, you know what? Since everybody's crazy, I'm going to go over to the priest's house and see if I can get the priest, because I know he was not going to believe that I'm a ghost, because once a person is dead, they are in the arms of the Lord. So he goes over to the priest's house, but his housekeeper was the first one to see him. She sees him, starts screaming, running away, but at least she left the door open behind her. So she's running toward the stairs. She falls over. The priest hears her fall. He hurries to see what's going on with her. And she's like, Father, John Connor's ghost is below in the kitchen, and he has only a sheet on him. And the priest is like, ma'am, that is not true. There is never a person seen after parting with this world. It says the words were barely out of his mouth when the ghost was there before him. In the name of God, are you dead or alive? You must be dead, for I said mass in your house, and your corpse was on the table. I was at your funeral. And John Connor's like, what is wrong with all of you people? Obviously, I'm alive. I'm standing right here in front of you. Who would kill me? Why would you think I was dead? And the priest, I love this, when he asked who would kill me, the priest said, God, who kills everybody. And, but for your being dead, how was I to be asked to your funeral? And John's like, I don't know. Obviously, it was a mistake because if I was dead, I wouldn't be here right now talking to you, wrapped up in this dumb sheet. Can you please put some clothes on me? And the priest was like, oh, yes. Okay. Yeah, no, you're right. I can feel you. I can see you. Okay. No, come. Okay. Go into the kitchen. I'll bring you clothes. And then you have to tell me what's happened. What is going on? Because you've been gone for 3 weeks. And John Connor's like, I've been gone for what? I thought it was like gone for like 3 days. And the guy's like, no, put your clothes on and let's have this conversation in the kitchen. So John sat down and he told the priest about the day that his son was born. He was super excited that it was a son and that he wanted to get the best sponsors for his kid. And so he was going to go to the next town over because it's a son and his son was like the most important thing. And so I stopped at this restaurant, like this public house. I was buying people drinks and telling them all about my son, how amazing it was. I had had a few drinks myself and I got back up on the road and I met this guy and he got me all turned around. And then I went back to his house and I woke up there this morning without my clothes. And the priest was like, oh, I think I know who you ran into. And this is what threw me for a loop, Geoff, because who do you think he ran into? Like, who do you think that the strange man was?
The devil.
I also was thinking the devil. And I would have thought, too, that this priest would tell him that it was the devil.
Yeah.
But the priest said, oh, I think I know who you're talking about. That's Daniel O'Donoghue, King of Lochlean, that played the trick on you. Daniel O'Donoghue is the king of the fairies.
Oh.
And I'm like, that's fascinating that's who it was. And the priest says, why didn't you get sponsors at home in this parish for your son as you did for your daughters? And the guy's like, because my son is better than my daughters. And the priest was like, no, it's not. And I don't think that the king of the elves liked what you were doing either. And so, for the remainder of your life, show no partiality to son or daughter among your children. It would be a just punishment if more trouble came to you. You were not content with the will of God, though it is the duty of every man to take what God gives him. 3 weeks ago, your supposed body was buried, and all thought you dead through your own pride and willfulness. And the guy's like, oh, that explains why everybody kept screaming in terror when I came up to the door. And the priest was like, all right, here's what I'm going to do. I'll go and tell everybody that you're alive, that you didn't, get killed or whatever. And so the priest spent the morning going around to everybody telling them, hey, guess what? John Connor's alive and well. And so when Mrs. Connors heard this, says she opened the door, seeing her husband behind the priest, she screamed and fell. A little girl that was with her at the door dropped speechless on the floor. When the woman recovered, the priest began to persuade her that her husband was living, but she wouldn't believe that he was alive until she took hold of his hand. Then she felt of his face and hair and was convinced. It says, no matter how large his family grew after those years, John Connors never went from home to find sponsors. The end. I loved that in that ghost story, there was no ghosts.
Yeah. Just
just fairies.
They thought it was a ghost. Yeah.
It's like the thought of fairies.
And like the ghost was the living man.
Yeah. And so I was like, oh, that's a nice little bridge between the dark half of the year where you have all of these spirits of the dead, everything's dying, everything's hopeless, and a little story to bring us into fairy realm where it's springtime, or it's not springtime yet, but the hope of spring is coming upon us. And that will hopefully have a little more fairy folk who will do horrible, terrible things to horrible, terrible men. Oh, did you have any thoughts you wanted to say on that story?
No, I just thought it was fun. I thought it was interesting to have a ghost story that, there were no ghosts, there were fairies, and then also the person that thought was a ghost was actually just a living person, and he was haunting everybody, but while he was still alive.
I also thought that the story, that was such an interesting story for the author to include in his tale, inside of that book, because he had said kind of in his introduction that it was interesting to him that, and this person, I just want to make sure we said his name again, Jeremiah Curtin, that he thought that it was really interesting as he was like collecting stories, how many people believed in ghosts and believed in fairies, even people who we wouldn't have thought would still be believing in those things that he felt were like more of like, oh, these are superstitions that people had like way back in the day. People don't still believe these now. And I thought it was a really interesting story because you see that in that story, the doctor, you know, being like, oh no, ghosts aren't real, you silly child. And then being like, maybe I do believe in ghosts because I feel like I'm being confronted with like something I don't understand. And then even like the priest being like, no, ghosts aren't real. Maybe I do believe in ghosts. And then the priest who works for like the Catholic Church is saying, oh, I know who you ran into. The king of the fairies.
Yeah, king of the fairies.
The only thing that makes sense. And so it's just interesting how, and you find it today too. I feel like everybody to an extent does this, where they'll believe in one thing, even though it does contradict something else that they believe or that they know to be true. And they try to find like a balance between, because there's a lot of things in life that are very just like precarious on those like scales of belief and unbelief. And everybody has their own balance. You can be talking to a person who's like 100% like the earth is round and the moon orbits our planet. Obviously, to believe anything else would be nuts. Also, there are fairies that control the waterways and we have to offer blessings to them so that and it's like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And I will tell people that like, I find myself on the scale of like, I don't believe in ghosts, but I believe that there are ghosts. Or I can let myself like want to believe that there are ghosts. But it's funny how humans want to have things very like black and white. They're either true or they're untrue. And there are odd things in life that are like, yeah, they can't always be that way. And it's okay to like learn how to sit in ambiguity. So yeah, I really enjoyed these stories that I accidentally stumbled upon while looking for a completely different Daniel Crowley. But how thankful am I that where there is a Daniel Crowley folklore story, it included such a delightful tale of slapping corpses, chucking heads, drunken strangulation, and even some fairies playing cruel tricks on a man that I believe definitely deserved it.
Thank you for listening to The Fairy Tellers. If you enjoy what we're doing, please leave us a review or share us with your friends. For access to exclusive bonus content, consider supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/thefairytellers. Special thanks to Andy Forey for our music and to Clarice Inch for our artwork. And of course, a big thank you to all our patrons. Without all of you, this show wouldn't be possible.
Good stories pay little attention to cultural or linguistic frontiers. The student of story collections find themselves adrift on an ocean of stories, an ocean which is boundless, deep, and ceaseless in motion. Robert Irwin.
You know, make merriment with them now. So like blah, 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 blah.